Welcome back to Real Roots Radio. I'm really excited to have my friends Mo Pitney and John Meyer of Pitney Meyer joining us on the air today to talk about their brand new album, Cherokee Pioneer. How you fellas doing?
Good. Glad to be here, brother. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Man, folks have been anxiously awaiting this debut project. It's been a long time in the making, and it's really special and personal to you guys. And bluegrass fans in general are excited about having a new bluegrass album on a major Nashville label like Curb Records. What's it like for you guys to be driving around Nashville and see a billboard for your bluegrass album on display in Music City?
Well, the first time that happened, we posted up right underneath it and opened our cases and started playing music, and a little boy gave us $5. So
It was fitting.
so that was
For
that.
me, I just feel like we fooled them. We're bringing bluegrass back to Nashville. It's on the big screen.
This project was truly a labor of love and really kind of was initiated out of your guys' friendship, your love for one another, and your love for bluegrass. How did this concept come about?
Man, like you said, John and my friendship is kind of a central piece of the story of why this album happened. And, it's very different from, meeting an artist or admiring an artist on Instagram and sending them a message and saying, hey, we should collaborate. There's been a long-standing friendship that turned into, bluegrass jams in the living room and deep conversations about life and music. And for this album in particular, it was conversations surrounding American history and a whole bunch of things that were all happening at the same time when John opened up about playing some music at the Station Inn. And out of that came some songs that we wrote to surround some of the old standards that we planned to play. And then light bulbs started going off about making an album, and the dominoes just started to fall, and it was falling into place, you might say.
In an era where a lot of folks view an album as basically a collection of singles and whatever else they can pitch in, you guys really put a lot of care and thought into making this a cohesive project. You guys have talked frequently about the narrative arc that goes through Cherokee Pioneer. Why was that essential for you guys, and how did that concept of making this a cohesive project versus just a collection of songs, how did that idea come about?
Yeah, I think that we wanted to create something that would be listened to in its entirety. The songs kind of help interpret each other, and that theme in those songs really kind of arose, out of the process. But once we kind of discerned what was happening, we were able to lean in that direction, in terms of the song order, which songs made the record, which songs, even though we loved them, were pre-releases or what have you. But it's so funny. I just had another friend of mine review the record. It's coming out on Bluegrass today. But I encouraged him. I said, hey, I'm going to send you the vinyl in the mail. What I want you to do is find somebody with a record player, sit down and actually listen to the whole thing from start to finish, and then write your review. And so I was driving to where I am now, and he called me on the phone. He was like, you just made an old man cry. He said, just hearing the songs in the order you had them, I think he just felt the impact of that. And that was really encouraging, because that was kind of our goal from the beginning, to create it as a body of work rather than just a bunch of singles.
You mentioned the vinyl release of Cherokee Pioneer. The capturing of the album was unique, and we discussed this when we debuted the single "Old Friend" on our network a few months ago. That you guys recorded this album direct to tape, and so the vinyl edition of the project has something pretty unique. If I'm correct, the vinyl release, the music has never been touched by a computer. Is that correct?
That is right. It's one of the coolest pieces about this project. And it was funny, at the very last minute, there was a communication thing where we were worried that maybe something had happened and the digital version got used for the vinyl, and then we finally got our vinyl, and you can actually see where the mastering engineer scratched on the vinyl his own signature with, I don't know what he used, but every single vinyl now that is pressed, you can see the mastering engineer's hand signature on the center of it, so that it's pressed. The acetate was pressed correctly, and it's pretty cool to be able to say that it hasn't been touched by the computer.
In addition to just doing it the old school way and presenting a challenge to yourselves, why did you think it was important for the material of this album to be presented in this old school manner, not being touched by a computer, and kind of have it a warts and all presentation? You guys recorded the album live. This vinyl edition is purely analog. Why do you think that's a good fit given the content of the album?
I'll say something really quick, and then I want John to finish this. But when we were making the album, the first morning, on Monday morning, when we were going to start making music, I happened to like check my phone for the last time. I was going to check my phone at the door. And the last time I jumped on social media, I came upon a video of people making music with AI, just typing in through Chat GPT what you wanted your album to sound like. And I just thought it was really ironic that we were getting ready to do the exact opposite thing over the next 3 days. And I think in this day and age, there's a tremendous need to learn how to do things disconnected from the computer. And there's 1,000 reasons for that. But I'll let John finish it. I just thought that was an interesting experience I had just before making the album.
Yeah, I think music is, fundamentally a human expression as an art form. Of course, the birds sing. We hear music, in the trees and the wind and all that. But we chose to lean into what makes music human, which is humans playing music, rather than trying to mitigate that element as much as possible through digitally manipulating the tracks, or, as most said, even going so far to just create something with AI. So we kind of ran in the opposite direction, maybe almost as a it's like going through chemotherapy, maybe as a way to hit the refresh button for ourselves and how we
Like a
think about
detox.
a detox. Yeah, how we think about making music. And yeah, that was an incredible experience. It brings your own weaknesses and strengths as a player, as a singer, to the forefront, and then you kind of have to lean on each other to make music as a group rather than just isolated.
The setting of the album was also conducive to that sort of approach to recording as well. We may have mentioned it a few months ago, but you guys recorded this album in a cabin that was once owned by Johnny Cash, right?
That's right. We have a friend. His name is Kyle Thomas, and he was managing the Johnny Cash Museum. It's actually in Bon Aqua, Tennessee, is one of the places that he owns. He's got a cabin northeast of town, and this one's southwest of town. There's 107 acres and a bunch of Johnny Cash memorabilia there. He used this cabin to kind of get away from his Nashville life, his road life, and go garden and go hunting and go sit down by the river and pray. He's got an old cross down there by the river where he used to pray, and just a really interesting location. And Kyle got us in. Brian and Sally Oxley own it now, and he asked them about it. And it just all fell into place to make a album in Johnny Cash's living room, which is another odd and really cool element to this project.
When we've chatted about this album previously, most notably for Bluegrass Unlimited, you talked about having this approach to making an album and being able to see the axe marks in the walls, if you will, where the cabin had been furnished in the 1800s, and that was kind of appropriate to be looking at those, knowing that you're not going to be going through and making artificial music. You're doing the real stuff, so people can hopefully hear those axe marks on the record too, right?
Yeah, we
I
didn't
hope
run
so.
this album through a sawmill. We had to use hand hewn methods to get her done.
Hand-hewn music.
We mentioned the narrative arc to the album. John, why don't you kind of go through this narrative that the album presents when you listen to Cherokee Pioneer in its entirety?
Yeah, I'd love to. So the very first song we released was "That Sounds Lonesome," which went number one on Banjo Radio. And I said the other day, if there was ever a station that I would want to go number one on, that's Banjo Radio. But we released that song first as a standalone single to kind of introduce people to the band, to the music, and what was coming. And the very last line of the song, "That Sounds Lonesome," the last line is, "That sounds a little too lonesome to me." And then from there, the first release we had of the record was a song Mo and I wrote with Wyatt McCubbin called "Old Friend." And so what started to emerge was kind of our answer to all those old lonesome themes. You know, we wanted to take people on a journey of friendship, of heartache, of repentance, of restoration, of healing. And so you can kind of trace those themes through the record. We start with banjo picker and a bluegrass band, and that's just sitting on the front porch having your buddies over. You know, you got suppers on the stove, come on over, we're having a good time. And kind of from there, there's just a journey that takes place, a lot of it, you know, symbolically or in kind of a parable form. But by the time you get to the end of the record, you've taken this journey where, you know, we ended the record singing in an a cappella gospel song. And that's kind of the journey that we feel like we've been on, and also the journey we wanted to invite other people into.
And having that journey conclude at the Lord's table, you mentioned that was personal to y'all, but significant as well. That Why was that the final resting spot of all these narratives and threads that you guys weave throughout the album?
Mm.
You know, well, I'll say this. I have struggled with the idea after coming to Christ about do I need to make gospel music or do I need to make country music, or
Right.
what is the right way to think about art? And really, when I realized that the Bible is full of love, loss, brokenness, adultery, and murder, and all the above, but the reason it can be told correctly is like you've pointed out, the narrative arc that leads to the one and only place where all of those things, the good, the bad, and the ugly, can be turned to good, as Romans 8:28 says, that God turns all things to good for those who love him, or in other words, have sat down at his table. And so to be able to think about music, whether it be our country albums, but especially this bluegrass album, which handles all the lonesome themes of human life, murder, craziness, and then to let it rest and find its reconciliation at the Lord's table, I think is really the only way to handle any story and find
Mm-hmm.
redemption.
And
But it's right at
it
this
kept
level.
us it kept us from siloing our art and our faith, because you know some people would look at making music as, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to make a gospel record, and then I'm going to make what I'll call a secular record. And we just, however it came about, we didn't do that. It was kind of like each piece is telling a story that's part of a larger narrative. And yeah, that's just something that keeps coming up for me.
Man, and you're so true, because uh, by not segmenting those messages, and
Mm-hmm.
by not segmenting that music as to, like you said, a gospel record and a secular record, it's an either or, it's a
It's
binary
like true
choice.
life. We wanted it to be true to life. And we, you don't get up in the morning and think, okay, today's a gospel day. And you don't get up tomorrow and say, okay, today's a secular day. Or maybe you do, but I would say that's a split world. You know, you're sort of splitting um, really who you're created to be. And those somehow have to come together. And we wanted
As
that to.
the scripture calls that being double-minded, right?
Right. So even musically, we wanted that to kind of tell a different story.
Man, and so true, because sometimes people put that onus on artists or musicians that they either need to make one or the other. They don't need to be being their authentic selves, if you will. If being a Christian is the biggest defining aspect of you personally, that should shine through no matter what sort of music you're making, just like no matter what sort of trade you have.
Yeah.
If Our pastor has talked before that, man, the best way to live out your faith at the workplace isn't to make sure you have a Bible on your desk for people to see. It's to work hard. It's to be honest in your dealings. It's to do your
Hmm.
best. It's to make your decisions with integrity. That's how you do that. It's not by preaching to everybody. Not that that's not that there's not a time or a place for that, but
Right.
focusing on being the best employee you can be, your faith will shine out through that.
Mm.
It doesn't have to be oh well, this is my Jesus lunch, and then the work is kind of secondary. And
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. And we kind of, that's one of the things that Mo and I have talked a lot about throughout our friendship is, especially in kind of, coming to Christ or coming back to Christ around the same time, in already being musicians, there's an element of people around us or people close to us being like, well, now you're only going to play gospel music, right? And so struggling through that is like, okay, is that what I'm supposed to do? Or am I actually supposed to just try to tell the truth through whatever medium he's given me to tell?
man,
So,
man, I had a classmate in college that put it perfectly. They said there's a difference between Christian music and music made by Christians.
hmm,
And so you can be a Christian making music and it not necessarily fall under the camp of Christian music. Rock made by Christians is going to naturally sound different than regular rock, but it's also going to sound different than Christian rock as well. So that's what you
yeah,
guys are doing. Yeah.
it's really interesting. It's we could have a whole podcast on just that topic, because it's people take different paths there. And it's just interesting how that plays out in the things people create.
In the way that the album was recorded, you guys talked about focusing on making the music as a unit. And what were some other lessons you learned in recording an album live direct to tape?
The live part, I guess the main one for me, we've talked about the computer, but like we're living in a world where every part of our life, not just music, is becoming reliant on the computer. Our memory, our source of knowledge, you know, writing, spell check, every single thing that we do, which I'm the worst of all. I need spell check more than anybody. I'd rather lean on my wife for spell check than on my phone or my daughter, Evie. She really helps me spell well. But my point being is all of us make mistakes. Sin is the idea of missing the mark. And what are you going to use in the end to have cover your mistake? Technology or the people around you? And there's a wrong way to think about the people around you covering your mistakes, and there's the right way, in that in the right kind of community, love covers a multitude of sins. And we found out in this experience, which I didn't see coming, was that in order to let the best performance win, the collective performance win, the community surrounding you ends up having to cover whatever mistake you have and almost beautify your wart. And to yourself, it looks like the most ugly thing in the world to look at your mistake. There's something in the context of the whole that it turns into what's beautiful about the album. And that just kept happening over and over again. That's just one of many things that was learned, but John can probably add something to that as well.
Yeah, I think it's a little nerve wracking at first because we've grown to rely on the ability to just hit that space bar and take that kickoff one more time, and so yeah, the first couple you kick it off, and you can just feel right away whether it's happening or not. And then once you're off and rolling, it's like, okay, we got to keep walking on water. Don't look at the wind or the waves, or we're going to sink this thing. And yeah. So I think what Mo said, learning to lean on each other, listening to each other, same way you would if you were just playing music together, because that's what we wanted to capture, was the experience of making music together. Um, so I think that's what happened, and that's brought with it an ability for me to keep enjoying hearing these songs. I've been a part of projects before, even my own projects, where by the time we're done recording them, I'm so tired of them, you know. But with this project, it's like I've got the record now at my place, and we'll put it on and listen to it, and I just enjoy it so much. And that's not because I'm so great or whatever, but what was captured was this communal effort, and I get to hear Mo's guitar, I get to hear his voice, I get to hear Nate, I hear Janae, and I'm such a fan of what they do, and just the way that came together. It's brought an increased ability to keep listening and still enjoy it, rather than wanting to chuck it out the window.
We're chatting with Mo Pitney and John Meyer of Pitney Meyer. Their new album, Cherokee Pioneer, is available now on Curb Records. You guys have mentioned in the past about the concept of parable, kind of defining and being a lens to look at the album through. For folks that maybe aren't familiar, what is a parable, and why is it such an appropriate term to describe the album and describe the way that you guys conduct the way that you communicate and you talk about your faith?
Maybe I wish I could give a more scholarly answer to what a parable is. I don't actually even know what the word parable means. One of you guys might, but the way that I understand a parable is a story that is able to connect you to higher stories. So it's a story that's maybe told in a smaller way, like a sower went out to sow, and you're just thinking of a farmer throwing seeds on the ground, and you have all these different kind of soils and all of that. But really what the story is doing is just giving you an accessible way to receive a higher understanding of something. So in Jesus's case, he's telling these stories of seeds hitting soil, and he's really talking about God's word from heaven going out, landing on different types of hearts. And yeah, you can do that in so many ways. I mean, in order to teach big ideas that are important to children, you find yourself telling stories rather than opening up a systematic spreadsheet of information. And if you can capture a heart through a story, but also have the plan to get them to catch a higher meaning to something, I guess it's kind of killing two birds with one stone. It's not just a story for a story's sake, but it's a story in order to lead you into something that's beneficial to every part of your life, or a higher part of your life.
That's good.
You have any thoughts, John?
No, I think you said it very well.
And that's obviously the route that you guys are taking on Cherokee Pioneer, by using stories, both historical or stories of adventure, some stories fictional, some stories true, in pointing people to Christ and to that Lord Sabbath song at the conclusion of the project. Makes for a really meaningful interpretation. And I've heard you guys bring up before that when we look at the Christ in the Gospels, that he uses, there's a reason that parables are one of the most common ways that he communicates, is using that narrative. And sometimes we often forget that in 21st century, when we want to kind of break everything down doctrinally or theologically, which is great. But
give me the data.
Yeah, the analytics. So
yeah,
but having
that goes to that separated world. So when you take a tree and you break down all its parts to understand it, the tree's dead. But if you plant a seed and watch it grow, it tells a story, right? And it's still alive. And teaching through story keeps the information intact in a body so that it stays alive. And when you dissect it for its parts, I mean, people did that in school. What happens when you dissect a frog in order to understand it? Then the information is dead because it's separated. So in so many ways, really the only way to keep something, a truth, alive is to tell it through story. There are some helpful reasons to turn them into creeds to make sure people don't get too far outside of boundaries, but I think it's more life-giving to just tell the story.
Cherokee Pioneer available now from Curb Records by Pitney Meyer. Where can folks go to see where you guys are on tour this year and to order one of these cool vinyl editions of the album? If they stream music, that's fantastic, but if they want a vinyl album that hasn't been turned into zeros and ones by one of them computers, where should they head?
You gotta walk up to John's Jeep Cherokee Pioneer. The only place they're sold is out of his trunk.
I wish. No, you can get the record really anywhere music is sold. But we'd love for you to go to pitneymeyer.com, and you can find our tour dates there as well. And if you're so kind as to order the record directly from us, that means Mo and I get to keep a few nickels off of it as well. So that helps buy diapers for the kiddos.
Diapers and taters.
That's right.
PitneyMeyer.com. Mo and John, thanks for joining us on Real Roots Radio today, and encourage everybody to go check out Cherokee Pioneer.
Thank you so much, brother. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks for watching. If you liked our video, be sure to give it a big thumbs up and hit subscribe so you'll be notified when we have new videos posting. Be sure to check out some of our other content as well. Thanks for watching.